Hello, welcome to the Desert Blockchain monthly session on Wednesday, January 25th, 2017. It's 7 p.m. Arizona time. We are at Gangplank Chandler, and we're going to be having a session tonight covering general blockchain, distributed ledger, decentralized web topics, and we're going to be going through a demonstration that's kind of hopefully kind of innovative. And then we're going to be talking about our Daylong event, which is coming up this Saturday, January the 28th, 2017, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. here at Gangplank Chandler. And we're going to be talking about the IBM Blockchain platform and going through the steps to set up for that. If you choose to, keep in mind that you don't need any technical knowledge whatsoever to participate in the Desert Blockchain events. We welcome everybody who's either been into the technical side of blockchain or who basically just heard the word for the first time an hour ago. So please feel welcome. The idea behind the Desert Blockchain events is to build community, to educate, and to innovate using the distributed ledger technology and other decentralized platforms that are available now, and to basically build some stuff. It's more than just theoretical. There's a huge opportunity at this point to create some really, really innovative use cases and services and value propositions. So thanks for tuning in, and we're going to give it a few more minutes and just kind of have some general chatter right now while other people are joining us. So thank you for joining. If you would like a link, please check the Meetup site, meetup.com, under Desert Blockchain. There is a link for the Google Hangout posted there. And if you have any kind of technical difficulties, please give me a call at 602-228-4486. So cool. We've got a bunch of people that are, the bathrooms are down the hall. So have you been here before? I can't remember. No, this is your first time.
Yeah.
Cool.
We went at the hacking event
Okay.
last week.
Yeah.
So you invited.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We were over at DeVry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we set up the thumb drive thing.
Yeah.
And you're at ASU, right?
Yeah.
And you're working on your master's thesis and so forth.
Yes.
Or your master's degree. Cool. In computer science.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right. Joe, you want to, well, has anything come up since our session? Hang on just a second. I want to check the audio on this. So make sure we got the microphone. Yeah, we do have the Yeti. Good. Okay. So we met and you were kind of just being introduced to blockchain and the whole idea.
Yeah.
Have you any questions come up since then?
So I learned about it. I mean, I've been through that videos that on your website.
Mm-hmm.
So they were quite. It was quite learning experience. Like I learned about Zcash, Ethereum, the basics about it, and then the IPFS. They were quite many basics. So I'm like rehearsed with the basic idea of it. I want to go more deep in it. So that's why I want to learn.
Cool. Very cool. Raphael, welcome.
Hey, Jay.
How are you?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
Very well. Let me put you full screen. So
all right.
You want to go ahead and introduce yourself since you're on the Hangout, and tell us what you're interested, what you'd like to create tonight, or what you'd like to get out of tonight.
Definitely. So hi, everybody. My name is Raphael. My background is product design. So I do all sorts of digital product design for a company here in Scottsdale. And my interest in blockchain is how it can kind of empower and create opportunity for the underserved markets, most focused on kind of just enhancing security, identity, and then I think peer-to-peer. I think there's a lot of potential there. In terms of for tonight, I just really like hearing more of what's going on I really appreciate you doing this, Jay. So I just love to absorb any knowledge that I can. So don't really have any expectations for this evening. Just happy to be here.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining us, Raphael, and chime in if you have any questions or comments or whatever. So,
sounds good. Thank you.
Cool. All right, Joe, you want to introduce yourself? And
sure. I'm Joe. I've got a history. I started off in electrical engineering many years ago. Did lab programming with a ancient language called C.
Mm-hmm.
Then I moved into telecom business, product management, strategic project strategy. I took a stint as an industry analyst for a couple of years. And over the last 4 or 5 months, I've been researching into blockchain. And I came across like 2 days ago the best resource I've found. And it's called, if you Google, it's called the Princeton ebook. So, and it's awesome. And it really gets down into details of all the decisions that were made in the history of back before Satoshi was even known and how it came out about it. Very good book. Google it. It's the Princeton ebook on blockchain. You can find it. And it's like 300 pages, PDF. It's free. Everybody has at Princeton, so that's a good thing. So I've got an interest on this, interest on expanding the technology, looking at everything, not looking at cryptocurrency and not really into the fintech or financial technology, but everything else that's going on. And I think I'm convinced when I look at it, this is going to be a game changer. And I'm kind of trying to figure out okay, how can I catch on to this rising star? Make my fortune, that sort of thing, go for it. And so you're starting at the front of your career.
Yeah.
I'm starting at later on, but hey, this thing is so big. I think there's a lot there for everyone.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Well, Princeton, some of the Ivy League schools are definitely into the blockchain technology. For instance, Joe mentioned Princeton, and the 2 founders of something called Blockstack are Princeton PhD candidates, Manib Ali and Ryan Shea, I think it is. And I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about an event that I'm going to be going to next week called Construct 2017, which I think is a really, really important event. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share here. Hang on, bear with me just a moment. So let's see if I've got it up. Yeah.
And John, you said the name of that book was just Blockchain by the Princeton Review, or?
No, it's Princeton University, and I came across it, and I found it by Googling by just Princeton ebook and blockchain. I'll find it and send a note to Jaden, or you already have it.
Cool. Thanks.
And we can put it on the notes. So let me go ahead and start screen sharing, because I think this is a really important event that kind of highlights the interest in this area. And so, Raphael, can you see that?
Yep, looks clear. Thank you.
Okay, good. So for those of you that might not be familiar, this is a publication called CoinDesk. I would say they are the premier publication in the decentralized web, blockchain, distributed ledger technology space, cryptocurrency. And they came, well, I first heard about this event on January 1, and I immediately signed up because the people that are involved are just amazing, and they are definitely the leaders, thought leaders, and leading technologists in this space. But it's basically by invitation only, and it says 350, but I think they've expanded it to 400. But some of the people that are part of the sort of the steering committee are Ethereum, well, Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are the 2 major cryptocurrencies. And then this Hyperledger, if you're not familiar, is a consortium of about 100, 120 companies like Intel, Microsoft, many of the major companies in the world. And they are exploring blockchain and distributed ledger technologies to incorporate into Linux. And it's actually being run by the Linux Foundation. So Blockstack, I mentioned, which is focused on naming and identity, and that's run by Manib Ali and Ryan Shea, two PhD candidates at Princeton. And there are many more, including IPFS. So if we scroll down a little bit, you can see IPFS. Juan Benet will be there, and I assume some other folks from IPFS, but you've got names like Deloitte, you have Fidelity, Vanguard, Intel, IDEO, IBM is the main sponsor, MIT Labs. So you've got just this incredible group of technical talent, thought leaders, etc. R3, for those of you that might not be familiar with R3, is a consortium that is investigating blockchain technology for new breakthroughs in banking and money transfer and so forth. It's about 70 banks, I believe, and it has about 150 million in funding for research. There's another entity called Chain, which has, I believe, got about 30 million in funding from Visa and Capital One to explore blockchain technology, and they've open they've open sourced their software, and they are actually building something to be an alternative to SWIFT, which is the platform that's the main way that money is transferred around the world. So it's a very impressive group. You can go to coindesk.com under events and look at Construct 2017. So here's some of the speakers. Let me
And Jay, the Swift thing you talked about, is that a product or is that a network?
I believe it's a company that runs a transfer mechanism for all the banks.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when the Central Bank, National Bank of Bangladesh got hacked for $90 million, they broke into SWIFT, and that's how they cleaned them out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is it like, so is it more of like a clearinghouse for banks?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's a clearing platform for the banks to transfer money in, billions, if not trillions of dollars.
There's trillions of dollars overnight that bounces around the system throughout the world.
Yeah.
It's big.
So it's huge, and Chain is with the backing of Visa and Capital One is looking at an alternative to SWIFT. And actually SWIFT has gotten into the blockchain and distributed ledger technology area as well, because they can see that, hey, this is an area that has promise, and they better get going on this. So SWIFT is investigating this as well. But anyway, I'm going to just kind of scroll through some of the speakers. This is the executive director of Hyperledger, and Ripple is another key player in this space. So it's just a phenomenal gathering of people that are going to be part of this event. And I'll leave it at that for what's in store for Construct 2017 next week. Microsoft has announced, and I haven't confirmed this yet, and I've indicated that I want to participate, but Microsoft is going to be doing a 2-day identity workshop after this Construct in their Microsoft collaborative lab. So anyway.
Jay, do you know if they'll make any of the proceedings or the slideshows or speeches available publicly, or?
The tendency is to video all the presentations.
Okay.
So hopefully they will. I don't know.
Right.
It looks like this kind of been thrown together rather rapidly. This is the first event of this type. Well, it's not quite the first event of this type. There was something called the Decentralized Web Summit in June, and all those sessions were recorded, and I'd highly recommend those as well. So, hello, somebody else has joined us.
Hey, hello Jay, this is Mohammed Noman here. I met you in the IoT Dev Fest last week. So this is my
Yes,
first time here.
absolutely. Welcome. I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself and
Sure.
say what your interest is in the blockchain area and what you do and what you'd like to get out of tonight?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Mohammed Noman. I go by my last name Noman, and I am the Director of Engineering in American Express. My background has been more technical. I used to be a programmer, then a lead architect, and then became the engineering director. But I still have a passion for technology, and I still do love hands-on. And one of the thing I guess I got on the bandwagon, I want to get on the bandwagon for blockchain, I guess, when I was reading about it. So one thing which I read, which is very fascinating, that the transformation because of blockchain is going to be bigger than the internet itself. That internet, it was about the information exchange, and blockchain is about the value exchange. And that is really fascinating for me. And I'm just looking forward to really understand, I think, how I can learn, and then how I can start maybe like thinking about some innovative ideas. So that's where I think I am right now, in the very initial stage of understanding blockchain and the tools and technologies available for me to learn. And I'm really looking forward from all of you and learn from your experience rather than, I think, starting from scratch.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me here.
Really appreciate it. And we definitely welcome your comments. I'm going to close this door to cut down on the noise just a little bit. And so I'd like to talk about a couple of things that you mentioned.
Sure.
Number one, you said this has the potential to have a bigger impact than the actual internet itself. And I actually believe that's the case. Why do I believe that? Because this is a coming together of not only technology, not only business models, but integrated into the very fabric of this new construct and paradigm is currency. So this is the weaving together of technology, business models, and currency into basically this new realm, this new paradigm.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I don't think people really get it until you get into the blockchain. But in addition to all of that, there's new opportunities in identity, and there's new opportunities in governance. So one of the applications that we might want to play around with on Saturday is voting. Today in the news, voting and voter fraud is a hot. And many people in this realm, this decentralized, distributed ledger technology realm, are looking at innovative ways to do voting in a peer-to-peer trusted fashion. So that's just one of the areas.
Yeah. And I know that it is going to touch pretty much every industry, whether it is insurance, real estate, or voting, I think what you're talking about, or maybe financial industries. And I think it is going to force even I believe the competitors, they would have to collaborate going forward, I think, to cut down the cost. Right now they're spending in duplicating the data, managing the things in multiple places. I guess even the competitor, they will be required to collaborate going forward, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, any other questions, any other comments at this point before we go into kind of a blockchain 101 demo?
Yeah, I guess I want to add a comment to that. So as you mentioned, that it will force the competitors to collaborate. So I think that there's a lot of beauty in that statement, but I think maybe it's probably more going to happen where companies, I would imagine, at least the well-established corporations, will very likely try to create like a dominating network so that they can establish the rule book in how this technology is enforced, at least through their primary business lines or service. So I would imagine this is going to allow an immense opportunity for small businesses to grow and scale fast, because they don't have the restrictions like these large enterprises do. And so with the R3 mention, I believe 2 of the large American banks just dropped out of that And I don't know the exact reasons, but I have a hunch it's because of their inability to conform to maybe like a set standard of rules that the global consortium wants to create. And so I think just sheer to the fact that they're not going to want to play nice with each other, I think that's going to allow like new small ideas that have the better, that have the user's interests in mind and want to create that one source of trust. So I just want to throw that out there because I think that's immense opportunity for like equality in the world versus like, you know, companies that have fiduciary responsibilities to investors and shareholders.
Yep. That's a great point, Raphael. Because even though it was Goldman Sachs and I think Morgan Stanley dropped out of the R3 consortium, that doesn't mean that they dropped out of blockchain. That just means that something might have happened with the way that the R3 consortium was going, and they decided to peel off on their own. Now, the point you're bringing up about this collaboration, I think, is dead on, in that all of a sudden these industries that hadn't collaborated and it had been very secretive are now finding it advantageous to collaborate. And that's a huge paradigm.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do a little screen sharing here and bring up a demonstration that everybody is welcome to go to. Let's see, that's the local host. Yeah, that's not it. Hang on. Anders.com blockchain. There it is. So you can go to Anders, ANDERS.com/blockchain. And this fellow's Anders, his last name escapes me. He actually works for Chain, and he's put together this really cool demo. So let me get into the Hangout again, screen share. Hang on, bear with me. And I think this is one of the best ways to really get your arms around blockchain. So let's go over what a hash is first of all. So if you just click on hash, all right. So this is the hash, which is kind of like a secret code, if you will, using SHA-256. Here's the coding out, or the hashing algorithm. Anyway, this hash is the hash of basically nothing. So here's a blank area of data, and behind the scenes there is, unfortunately I can't highlight that hash, but watch what happens when I type my name in. All of a sudden this changed.
Yeah.
Completely changed. Now watch what happens if I put a dot in. It completely changes again. And this is a key part of the security model for this whole distributed ledger, decentralized web and blockchain realm. So keep that in mind. This entire thing changed, this entire code, long code changed just with one single period. So now let's take a look at the block. So this is just one block, and this is an empty block basically. So if you take the number one block, you add this thing in, which is called a nonce, which is kind of makes the hash do something special, which is creates 4s leading 0s. If you add something, again, I'll type my name, JY, all of a sudden this hash has changed, and you'll notice that it no longer starts with 0s. It no longer starts with 0s until we go through a calculation in the background. When we hit mine, and all of a sudden it's figured a new nonce. Let's see, it took out my name. Anyway, we hit J and mine. Okay, for some reason it's taken out. Anyway, what it's doing in the background, it should keep my name in there. For some reason it's erasing it. But if it kept my name in, this nonce would change and it would return to basically 4 zeros on the front end of that hash. So let's take a look at this. Is more like an illustration of the blockchain. And if we start adding data like J, and then we do Joe, and then we hit mine. Let's see what happens.
So, but I think maybe while something is not working, Jay, I guess. So it seems even if you were changing the first block, so the entire, I think, chain was getting changed because you just modified the first block, I guess.
That's right. So
okay.
I'm doing something wrong, but I'm going to step through this, and you can play around with it on your own.
Okay.
And the source code is available for this, so you can actually pull the source code off of GitHub and change the source code and so forth and play around with it in detail. But this is an example where you start to add peers. So you can see here we've got peer A, here we've got peer B, and as we add information like J and Joe, you can see that the entire hash, it's actually this hash is hashing back here, and it's actually taking it all into account all the way to the end. And you can see the squares have turned pink, meaning that something is different in this chain versus this chain. So I'm not going to go into that, and you can look at the tokens and the Coinbase. Anyway, I've found this to be a really, really useful way to really get my arms around exactly what's happening with the blockchain. So I'm going to, and last month we went into more detail with this example, so I'm not going to go over that again. But what I'd like to try on tonight, unless anybody has any questions or comments about that.
No, this is really good. We'll explore it more.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, suppose I was an adversary and I tried to hack that chain there. Say my name's not really Joe. I'm trying to fool you that it's Fred.
Right.
So I go and try to change Fred. Well, the way the blockchain will work, you just can't change that. You got to go all the way back to the very beginning.
Yep.
And then it's pretty easy. I found the book I was talking about. If you want to Google it a bit, we can get that. But it's an amazing technology. And the guys who fit this up, whoever, I believe Satoshi was a team of guys, really and truly. Maybe it was just one, who knows. But it's brilliant in the way it's evolved over the first couple of years of how they put this together. So I think that's, I agree with you. It's going to be utterly game changing in the way business is run.
And by the way, in my view, Bitcoin sort of opened up the gates.
Exactly.
And Ethereum has added a new realm to explore. And in my view, the real workable and viable blockchain and cryptocurrency is yet to be created.
That's right.
Because Bitcoin and Ethereum both have some serious issues associated with it.
Well,
so
Bitcoin has not been hacked.
Yes, that's true.
So it's pretty robust.
Right.
And I didn't know why. For example, why did they design the thing on average to take 10 minutes to turn out a new block? That's to prevent spammers and hackers from flooding the gates, things that I never thought of that.
Yeah.
That's why they put it in there. And it's just amazing. The more I read about it, there's some geniuses out there.
Oh, yeah.
Who really just eat this stuff up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. And these geniuses are partly motivated by real money, like big money.
Yeah.
So last year, one of the key events was the, I'll call it the defeat of a decentralized autonomous organization that was designed to be sort of like a venture capital pool put together on the Ethereum, using the Ethereum platform and the Ethereum Ether cryptocurrency. And somebody basically pocketed 50, 60 million in short order by figuring out a flaw on it. So it's a really, really interesting game. Many of the people that are really into this come from a gaming background. So a lot of the foundation of this is based upon game theory, certainly, but also just the actual online games and what started as kind of like online currency in these games. So it's really, really interesting. So any comments or questions? Okay, I'd like to try something. This is like, you guys are the guinea pigs on this. Okay, so this is going to be a real on the fly demo. So I have a stack of communication arts magazines, and I'm going to try to demonstrate the paradigm. There's the cover of the magazine, and you can see I've got different like monthly editions and so forth. The current paradigm that we are in is, and this is not my analogy, but or metaphor, but it's like, if you think of these communication arts magazines as like data, if we want this data, what we currently do is, let's assume the room next door is a library. And what we do is we take these things, we put them in another room, put them outside, just assume those are in the next room. And if we are interested in that material, we have to go out, check through the door, and once we get into that room, we can access any one of those books or magazines or whatever the content is. So it's called perimeter security. So the security model that we currently operate under relies upon keeping the unwanted people out of that room. Once you get in that room, you have access to all of it.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Now, the other thing about it, in terms of the bandwidth, is, let's say all three of us want the same magazine. We all have to exit this room and go into the next room and then come back and use it, the same content. Even though you might have a copy, you might have a copy, and I might have a copy. Okay? So that's the paradigm that we currently operate under in terms of information technologies. Okay? So here's what we're exploring. So let's assume that our content is actually now these. This is the current edition of the New Times, which you can go out and get on any street corner. And if I give Joe a copy and you a copy and I have a copy, and if you guys had copies, we could, at this point, we'd all be pretty sure that my copy is the same as these copies, okay? So this is kind of a peer-to-peer construct. But if, based upon what we just saw on that demonstration in the web, if I take my copy and I go to page 49 and I put so much as one dot on the page, all of a sudden my copy is different than all the other copies in the stack and what you guys have. And that becomes glaringly apparent in that hash. So all of a sudden, this copy is different. Okay. Now, but let's assume that we had a way where everybody else could put the same dot on page 49. Okay.
Right.
And so now all of our copies are exactly identical. And we can compare that hash to assure mathematically that our copies are all identical. Okay, does that make sense?
Can we tell that they've been changed though?
We can tell if the dot that I put on mine is different than the dot that you put on yours because of that hash. So if that hash at the very end of the chain does not match your hashes, then all of a sudden we know that something is different.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The hash is what defines it. Says,
Right.
I've got the golden copy in the library. It's got this hash. You've got a copy. If it's got the same hash, we know
It's the same thing.
it's the same thing. And it's digital, right?
It's digital.
Right.
So what this means, in addition to all of us being very confident that this copy is the same as yours and yours, now all of a sudden we don't have to go in the next room.
Right.
So if you don't have your copy, let's say you take this and you want that same content, you can get it from me or you can get it from Joe.
But how would I be sure that you have the right copy?
It's because of that hash.
Right. There's a master hash of the original document says this goes
Yeah.
hand in hand with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the hash
If-
is I can't explain how it works.
Well,
It's not
it's
exclusive order. It's huge.
yeah, there's a whole science around this hashing and this cryptography. But it's like when we used to, as kids, we used to have these coder rings
Oh yeah.
where, you'd get the ring and you'd want to send I'd want to send a message to my girlfriend.
Yeah.
So I'd do this little coding thing and then she'd get it and she'd take her ring and uncode it and, we'd get into trouble. So
So the important thing is if I've got some contract or message or document, if it matches the original hash, which I guess is published somewhere, you know that you got the real thing.
yes.
And if it doesn't match, you may not be able to find that dot in there, but you know it's not the real thing.
Yeah. You've got something
You got
different.
something's been altered.
Something's
Yeah.
different. That's
Yeah.
a big deal.
Jay, but just one question. So does that mean, so maybe like, let's say you put a dot, Joe put a dot. So maybe in the blockchain, somehow there may be people, they can kind of like just partner together and say, let's do something together. And then the hashes match for both of you together. And then it will become a valid block, I guess.
Yes, that's a great point. And that's kind of starting to examine a 51% attack, where all of a sudden, if Joe and I gang up on you, we can change the truth effectively.
Mhm.
So that's part of the beauty of the Bitcoin blockchain, is that it becomes very, very expensive to launch that 51% so that Joe and I would collude against you. It's because of the money. The other part that I kind of skipped over, that's a key differential between Ethereum, which has been hacked, and the Bitcoin blockchain, is something called Turing complete. So Turing complete means that you can basically do any kind of calculation under a Turing complete platform or construct, including infinite loops, which is a big, big problem. Now, Vitalik Buterin, who was the founder and came up with the idea on Ethereum, counteracted that by adding this sort of like fuel to the calculations. So he was banking on this fuel being your safeguard stopgap for getting into infinite loops. because the calculation would only go on until it ran out of fuel and then it would stop. So it is Turing complete. Satoshi Nakamoto, who wrote the white paper for Bitcoin blockchain, specifically put it in as Turing incomplete. That means you can't do all possible logic, and it also prevents this infinite loop happening. And I would say it's been more effective in becoming a secure platform, because Bitcoin has withstood 6-7 years of hacks and Ethereum has not.
One of the most interesting comments I heard along that line, I was talking to somebody, well, why don't people just jump on Ethereum? It's much more flexible, does much more things, much more, the guy says, complicated. Bitcoin tried to keep it simple, which limits the number of things that you don't know that's in your complex solution that are openings.
Right.
That's how Ethereum's downfall came on when they had that hack on it.
Yeah. So Ethereum is much more well, the Bitcoin blockchain, it takes something to get your arms around that for sure. It's, you got to have a pretty good technical knowledge to do that, but Ethereum apparently is even more complex, and I have not really done a technical dive into Ethereum. But it's, the code is also part of this public blockchain. So you've got a whole community of developers writing code that's part of the blockchain, and you know, how fault tolerant is that code? And that's problematic.
Yeah.
Anyway, to get back to this analogy.
Hey Jay, I actually had a question. Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Just to verify, so the difference, I always thought Bitcoin, the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum was Bitcoin was built for more financial applications, and Ethereum seems to be more of like an undefined network that can be applied to lots of different types of information transaction. Is that a good understanding, or can Bitcoin be used for the same type of applications as Ethereum?
Well, theoretically, you can use Bitcoin, the Bitcoin blocks, to house various information. But it's problematic because those blocks have a limited size, only megabytes or megabits of storage. So I would say certainly the Bitcoin blockchain is designed for electronic money. I mean, that's specifically what it was designed for. Ethereum was designed to be a general purpose world computer. So you're right. The fundamental design specs were significantly different.
Gotcha.
But there's also been, I would say, a considerable amount of energy and attention put into trying to make the Bitcoin blockchain more general purpose. And there's all sorts of like side chains and all sorts of efforts to overcome some of the obstacles and also to expand the use case for the Bitcoin blockchain. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Can I give you a good company to go look at?
Yeah.
It's an Internet of Things company, IoT company. They're called Filament, just like in the light bulbs. And they used the Bitcoin blockchain not for transferring money, but for registering that you've bought that device, sets up a 5-year contract. Now, if their company goes out of business, this company goes out of business, all your little device out in the field will continue to run because it'll activate and check itself just by checking on the blockchain. So it's an application there that says we're not using the currency. Whenever they make a transaction, they always have to make it for like a penny, even though your devices, you might have bought thousands and thousands of dollars of devices. But what they do is they hash, you buy the IoT devices, which are sensors and stuff. Filament writes the contract, sets it up, activates devices, then puts the hash of that into the blockchain.
Right. Into the Bitcoin blockchain.
The Bitcoin blockchain, right. And they put it for a penny transaction.
Right.
Because you got to do a transaction.
Right.
So these IoT devices, which are hooked up to low power networks and Bluetooth or whatever, they turn on and they go out and check the blockchain and said, yes, my number matches, I'm valid. And that's a very creative sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
And that's a hardware-oriented company that says we're using blockchain for that and Bitcoin for that.
Yep.
That's wonderful, wonderful example. And you are Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, so Joe, can you please maybe share if you have a link or something to read a little bit more about that? That sounds very interesting.
Company is called Filament, filament.com.
Oh, filament.com. Okay.
Yeah, that's the company's name. You can go out
I'll
there
throw it in there. I just found it. I just put it in the chat.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Rafael. Thank you, Joe.
So I talked to the guy that ran the place, do it up in Reno, Nevada. I think that's where they're headquartered. I said, "You're doing what?" He said, "Well, here's how it works," and told me everything about it. He says, it's awesome stuff. And so that's a situation. They make a penny transaction. The value of the transaction, though, is like it may be $1 million contract. Right?
Oh yeah.
But it only goes into Bitcoin as a penny because what's wanted is the hashtag. Because the problem they had was companies worried about, well, what if your company goes out of business? How do I know my fleet of IoT devices will keep working, not go stream dead on them? So they said, oh, they will go out and check the blockchain, and they'll know that you've been authorized and paid for, and they do it like on multi-year contract.
Yeah.
Brilliant idea.
Yeah.
How many other things like that can happen? Because they're not doing cryptocurrency. They just want to get into the blockchain because then it's locked up forever.
Right. Yeah, they've got that decentralized, distributed, peer-to-peer trust. Because after so many blocks, you can be sure that it's effectively impossible to change the history.
I mean, people are concerned that, for example, like the 51% problem, if you look at the Chinese miners, I think they add up to more than 51%. So there's always conspiracy theory guys that could happen, and that conceivably could happen. As soon as word of that leaked out that there was a controversy over that, boom, the whole Bitcoin market would go flop. Everybody said, we can't trust anything. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's some interesting game dynamics that Joe's bringing up. Is that the mining actually calculating those nonces has become centralized, but there are other incentives in place that keep the whole community honest. Even though some of these people could launch a 51% attack, it would basically destroy all the value that they put into their mining apparatus and all the value that they've got in the Bitcoin that they hold. So even though it's possible, it's not the optimal game theory outcome for the community.
That's the elegant way of putting it. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So and I don't think anybody could have predicted this in advance. It's only happening as as it's actually in the hands of the public and people test it, because effectively with the Bitcoin value, you've got like a $14 billion bounty on the table. If you could defeat that SHA-256 hashing algorithm, you could effectively put about $14 billion in your pocket. So that's a pretty big incentive. So in any case, back to this. So does this kind of illustrate how the information gets distributed and how one little change can impact the whole thing? And then the other part of this is, so you can have this blockchain, let's call it the New Times blockchain, and imagine that instead of these all being the same issue, these were, a series of weeks in time. So you can have this blockchain, but then you can also have, and I apologize for the cover, but consider this to be a different blockchain. So this is another set of magazines, and assume that the same thing was happening here, where you knew that even if you went back, 50 weeks and you put one dot in this magazine, everybody would know it because that hash would change on the very front end of the whole thing. So you could consider this a blockchain, and then yet even another blockchain, which is a different magazine. So I think a lot of people think that the blockchain is one thing, but it's not. any one of us can create a blockchain. And in fact, on Saturday, via the IBM service, we'll be able to create blockchains of our own under whatever our design is.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I'm going to stop there. Any questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, Jay, actually, so I like how you mentioned anyone can create a blockchain. And is that to say that just by downloading any of the open source software and hosting it in a database and I guess sharing that amongst others, are there any like rules of conduct or best practices that the blockchain community enforces so that there aren't these like fictitious blockchains being created that could potentially be malicious?
Great question. And let me put it this way. In fact, I hadn't even thought of this dimension of the analogy or the metaphor, but the assurances that you're talking about, Raphael, are in sort of like the constitution of the blockchain. So what are the ground rules? In the Bitcoin blockchain, one of the key ground rules is there will never be any more than 21 million Bitcoin. That's a key part of the foundation. And then the other thing is it was designed so that you've got this basically exchange of electricity for Bitcoin. So in terms of best practices, there hasn't been like an international standards body that's created some sort of, this is the standard way to build and create a blockchain. I think that will eventually come. Part of the work of things like Hyperledger and R3, they're certainly looking at best practices and they're looking at standards and that sort of thing. But I think it's too early to say that those standards have emerged or happened in the normal standards setting process. But let's use this same magazine analogy for the blockchain. The New Times has a higher subscribership community than I dare to say this magazine does, and I could be wrong about that. But you could think of this as like, hey, I can create my own blockchain just like I could create my own magazine, but how many people are going to read it? So, you know, if Jay creates his New Times and, you know, writes it up and I'm whatever, I'm not going to have the same circulation as this New Times. So although anybody can write a magazine, anybody can build a blockchain, the adoption factor is a key element of it. You've got to have more and more people sort of subscribing to your blockchain in order to make it worth anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think the blockchain, the way I kind of like understood one aspect of the blockchain is to take wherever in any industry, when we have something raw, it may be goods or services, and transform it into some kind of finished product. So there are many parties collaborating together. So I think the purpose of blockchain is to form some kind of like maybe value chain where the people are collaborating, or the networks, they are collaborating together. In that case, it would make sense to have a blockchain. But then personally, if I have blockchain, I think to your point, yeah, I can do something for myself, maybe just for experimentation, but it will not serve any real value, any real purpose, I guess.
Right. Right. And it's, let me make another point, an analogy. Because a lot of people say, hey, you know, this Bitcoin is just funny money. It's just, it's not really money. There's nothing behind it, so forth. Well, what about these? Here are two gift cards. One is for the Musical Instrument Museum and another one is for an Italian restaurant. Now, this Italian restaurant card, and I checked it today, has $50 worth of value on it. There's no central bank behind it. There's no government behind it. But I'm pretty sure that if I offered this to Joe, he'd be willing to pay me at least $5 for it, or $10 if he knew that there was $50 and he could take his wife out to dinner.
I think I saw that on Sopranos one night.
That's right. You'll pay me $500 for this.
Well, you know, they were,
A deal you can't refuse.
you know, they were trafficking in gift cards.
Oh,
Stolen
okay.
gift cards.
Yeah, yeah. So, in fact, this kind of created currency is a commonplace phenomenon. And, you know, the value of these cards would alter dramatically if, for some reason, we thought as a community that something was going to happen to this restaurant, that it would no longer be there, or something would happen to this museum. All of a sudden, the value would change instantly. And I'm not saying that anything's specifically going to happen with either one of these companies, but you might think of like Bitcoin or these cryptocurrencies as, what if you could combine the Italian restaurant with the museum and the Starbucks and all of these things, and you could kind of merge them into one card? All of a sudden, that gift card phenomenon starts to look like a currency that's not backed by any central bank or anything else. And so
is it more like a stock exchange?
in many respects, these cryptocurrencies act like a stock exchange.
I mean, there you have value, and the company has value, and if company loses respects or something, the value decreases.
Right.
And the same thing with maybe with Bitcoin.
Yep. So one of the things that just recently impacted Bitcoin was some of the currency developments around the world, like in India. Overnight or instantly, they outlawed their 1,000 rupee and 500 rupee notes.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people are going, how am I going to be able to buy food?
Yeah.
Same thing in Venezuela. And in fact, in Venezuela, they're actually jailing Bitcoin miners.
Really?
Yeah, they've jailed like 4 Bitcoin miners. So in addition to this innovation and developments in technology, this is going right to the heart of governments and politics and policy. Because one of the key parts of any kind of government is the issuance of money. So any government around the world, the heart of their existence is whatever currency they're issuing. So I think that's kind of a different dimension to this whole thing that a lot of people don't quite
That hasn't
grasp.
played out yet, how this all going to work out.
No.
When it comes right down to it, the government has the police. They can put a gun to your head,
That's right.
and they will control that currency. So how does Bitcoin play in all this? But it can get too big, the blockchain, that governments lose control of.
Well,
And
I think they're realizing that it's out of their control because everybody has a copy anywhere in the world, and because of that cryptography hashing algorithm that is out of the control of the government. Yeah, they can try to make some examples. They could try to arrest a few people, but they're not going to be able to get
can't get everybody.
they can't get everybody.
So that's the beauty of being distributed.
Yep. It's so there are some very powerful, very subtle dimensions to this whole conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be quiet. You guys have any questions, comments, etc.?
This is wonderful. I think so far I'm really enjoying the discussion and learning. I guess the way you are explaining the things, it really making lots of sense. I guess this is really great. Jay, Joe, I guess you guys are adding lots of value. Really appreciate it.
Here's the book I was talking about.
Okay.
You want to read that off to us?
Yeah, it's Joe's recommended book is Bitcoin and Cryptography Technologies. There's a slew of people.
If you Google that and Google Princeton, you'll find it. It's a PDF.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
the draft is dated February 9th, 2016. And Raphael, if you'd be so kind as to Google that. Oh, he looks like he dropped off.
Yeah, he might. I will try to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can show it on camera.
Yeah, let me see if I.
All right.
Let me switch over here. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's all.
No, we can't read it.
Yeah, I can't read it. But anyway, we'll get that out there. So, unless you guys have any other questions or comments, I'd like to kind of go over the prerequisites that I sent around for the Saturday event. And then, we can kind of talk about that. So let me tee this up. And let's see.
There's terms like you get in the.
Yeah, that's not it.
There's terms that I never thought I would use. There's terms that became down. So we would call, what's your spec?
Sorry about the delay and
Swipe is
here we go.
generalized term for making a transaction. So
I'm going to cover
it's
this.
called swipe because
So Saturday we're going to have what's called a day-long event, and the way that's going to go is we'll meet here. We'll start gathering about 9 a.m. here at Gangplank, and then we'll kind of introduce ourselves for a few minutes, 20, 30 minutes, and then we'll do a little bit of a question and answer on Blockchain 101 for those that might not know anything about blockchain. We won't go into a lot of depth, but then IBM Rose Brandolino from IBM is going to be doing a presentation for about an hour and a half from about 10 a.m. to 11:30, and she's going to be talking about their Blue Mix service, which is like Amazon, AWS, cloud services. She's going to be talking about their blockchain offering in the cloud. And here are her prerequisites for getting set up on that. Basically downloading some software and setting up Git, and also installing Golang or Go. So I'd like to emphasize that you don't have to do this. This is all optional. And even if, and invariably, some people have not done the pre-setup. And we'll, I'm sure during lunch or before we come back from lunch, we'll help each other set this stuff up. But in the afternoon, we'll be able to actually do some hacking and some, I don't know what totally, but if you want to create your own blockchain, explore the blockchain and so forth, that's going to be available. So we've done something like that with something called IPFS, which is the Interplanetary File System. And I'm not going to go over that because we've covered IPFS in detail. Another thing that I would recommend you take a look at some point is called BigChainDB, which offers a lot of scaling capability on top of IPFS to build blockchains. And I'm still kind of getting my arms around that. The other thing that I would highly recommend you take a look at is called Blockstack, blockstack.org. And that is a naming and identity management initiative. It's a consortium of companies, and they're actually working with Microsoft as well as the United Nations to create a new realm of identity for at least for the 1.5 billion people on the planet that don't have a birth certificate.
Wow.
So, so those are some interesting projects. All three of those projects, IPFS, Big ChainDB, and Blockstack, some of their key people are going to be at the Construct 2017 that I'll be attending next week. So anyway, any questions about?
So what are the security concerns that, I mean, this faces? I mean, one is obviously the SHA-256 tracking. That's not happening like now, but are there any security concerns with this Ethereum or Bitcoin?
Well, there's always security concerns, but the longer these communities stay in existence, and you know, the longer the time period that they go without being hacked or defeated, you can kind of infer the stronger the security. Does that make sense? So there's all sorts of innovation that's possible, like in the banking realm, to add sort of the human element to this whole thing, because this depends on keeping your private keys, or you can think of it like your password, secret. And if somebody gets your private key, they effectively get all your value. And there's all sorts, there's a whole realm. So Nomad, there's a whole realm in terms of where a trusted third party, like an American Express, like a bank or a telecom, I think they are in a position where they could open up a new set of services to help people sort of reset their password. Or if somebody all of a sudden becomes incapacitated, their loved ones can step in and take over their cryptocurrency accounts and so forth.
Yeah.
But it takes, I mean, it takes like a customer service capability. Sometimes it takes physical presence. But there's a whole realm of new services to add the human dimension to this technology breakthroughs. Does that
One more thing that Zcash is doing is they are giving like selectively your data to everyone. I mean, if a hospital needs it, they can decrypt a small amount of data, only the values that you allow them to decrypt. So the name and your blood group or something like that. And then there's bank, so they are giving separate amount of data, and in the same hash they are using both the values. So it's kind of a selective thing that they are doing right now.
Yeah, there's different ways to take the data, encrypt it, create a hash that points to that encrypted data, and to structure so that part or all of it can be decrypted. So I think what you're talking about, let me see if I can kind of recreate it, is that wouldn't it be great if our data was sort of like in compartments?
Yes.
So that if one of my compartments is breached,
Yes.
that doesn't open the door to all the other compartments.
Yeah.
Is that basically what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is a possibility under this new paradigm. And that really is, it's much better than what we were talking about, where if I can get into the library, if I can break through the door of the library, all of a sudden I've got access to all the data. In this, maybe I can break this copy of the New Times, but last week's copy it's going to take me a whole lot more work to break into that. And then the next week and the next week. So it just, there's a set of security so that it's all, each issue of the New Times is secure in itself, and yet there is a trusted chain between this copy and this copy that can create it as a whole whole set of data. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Any other thoughts or comments around that?
That was a good question. And just one quick question, I think, Jay, the Hyperledger, which is IBM is going to cover on Saturday, and I will be there for sure in person.
Mm-hmm.
So is Hyperledger built on the same concept as Ethereum? Or in other words, are they kind of like competitor, or how they fit in together, I guess?
I would say it's more like Hyperledger uses some of the pioneering concepts of like Bitcoin Core and Ethereum. I think they're actually creating their own blockchain software. I'm not that technically familiar with Hyperledger. There's a source of podcasts that I'd highly recommend called epicenter.tv, and that has had some recent interviews with the key people from Hyperledger as well as R3.
Okay.
And they get into a little more technical detail. But it's sort of like, if we go back to these magazines, it's sort of like, Bitcoin is maybe the New Times, Ethereum is maybe this Spanish Arizona, whatever it is. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah.
And then if you threw in another magazine like Forbes or The Economist or whatever, they're kind of like the same thing, but they're significantly different in their design and their purpose. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So, okay, any other comments or questions? Whatever. Let's see. Yeah, we do have some people viewing as well. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight, unless you guys have some more questions or whatever.
No question. Just last point is there any help you need for a Saturday?
Actually, I do need somebody to help me on Saturday. Basically, help open up and set up and so forth. So
sure. If I can be a little early, and we can connect maybe after this call, or maybe like sometime tomorrow, whatever I think works. But I can for sure can come early and then help set up, I think, the place.
That would be awesome.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Romantic, really appreciate it. Appreciate your offer. And if you are interested in helping on Saturday, please shoot me an email, jcarpenter@desertblockchain.com. It's on the website. And
okay, will do.
And then we'll coordinate from there. So
okay, sure. Thank you.
Really, really awesome. I appreciate everybody's attention and your participation, and hopefully you got something out of this. And you are, just by watching this and participating and showing up, you are part of building the community here in Phoenix and Arizona. And I really think that we have an opportunity to set ourselves apart and innovate in this space. There are a lot of places around the world that are looking at, the same opportunity, but I think we have a political environment and we have a technology environment and an entrepreneurial spirit here that can really be the foundation for creating some cool stuff with this new set of tools.
Yeah.
So, all right.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.